Hopefulness 2.0, day 20. Finally broke down and watched Dune last night. Sec. Oh, wait. I don't know, whatever. I've got to finish up my words. I gotta finish up my words. I gotta finish up my yogurt, so I gotta make some smoothies. I'm gonna toss these oranges because I just didn't eat them enough, and now they're all starting to shrivel up, look like shit. So I'll just throw them in the trash now. I feel bad wasting food. It's just life, I guess. But yeah, so I was taking a shower last night, and I was kind of like, I was talking to myself about like movies and stuff that I had hoped to like and whatnot. I found myself just kind of like really angry at some of the films I'd seen that had like really promising trailers to them. Two of them like just stood out, and it was Chappie and Alita Battle Angel. And like both of them sold you this idea that, you know, they were gonna cover effectively these growing pains of this AI creature, and that, you know, maybe there would be, hell, I don't even know. But it was like, okay, so they both showcase like this awakening, if you will, of AI and of the humanity that people showcase and whatnot. And while I understand that the humanity of humanity in general isn't just kindness, and you know that's effectively what was showcased in both of those films. It's like, I would say the thing that made both of those films frustrating and effectively ruined the experience for me is the fact that in doing so, one point of conflict was that they basically just gave up on their creators, on their parental figures. They straight up fucking discarded them for no fucking reason. None. Like, Chappie kind of felt like it was a kidnapping in a way. But at the same time, it felt like he made this choice to do this thing without having like, they didn't seem to really showcase that characterization in him before it happened. Where he decides to join up with this crew of hoodlums, essentially. And it was really frustrating to see that happen. It was like, the way they sold the film, it made it look like it was this kind of almost heartfelt thing. Of, hey, we're gonna show you, like, I don't know, the human, it's not even right, I've already said it before, but just like I can't even put into words, and it's frustrating because it's like, well, okay, well, you can't even fucking put it into words. So what's the fucking point? It was like they were trying to show us that we might actually care about robots and AI and the like. And it was like, now it's turning into an action film. There was nothing heartfelt about it. But the trailer seemed like it would be. With Chappie, it seemed like, oh, hey, you know, there's this effectively a baby AI. Oh, that's kind of cool. Let's see how this would play out. Instead, it turns into Chappie has to go fight this boss. And it's like, what? And then in the process, you know, he basically says fuck you to his parents in the beginning. And then only towards the end does he somehow come back. But it doesn't seem really logical that he was doing that in the first place. Like, it doesn't seem like there's a really logical progression in the behavior of what Chappie was doing. And the same thing goes with Alita. Like, Alita kind of did that, but it seemed so unnecessary, too. It's like, okay, we're going to talk about this. We're going to showcase this relationship. And this is the thing, like, the relationships matter. They're one of the most important things that an actor and a character and what makes them relatable to the audience. Like, they're really important. And the types of relationships, and it's not just necessarily, you know, some sort of platonic or romantic love. It can be any kind of relationship. It can be a relationship with a place. It can be a relationship with a thing. You know, there's a reason why favorite color is a thing that we care about when it comes to people, because that is a kind of relationship. It associates you with something for a reason. You know, my favorite flower is the pansy. I love the color. I love the coloration. I love how it looks. It's got multiple different types of colors and stuff. I love the shape. It's a great flower. But it's also got a name that a lot of people would use, you know, in a derogatory way, which I like as well, because it's like, yo, have you seen pansies? Those flowers are fucking beautiful. You can turn an insult right around because of it. I'm about to blend. And I think that makes that flower even more powerful because of that. It's like, bro, have you ever seen a fucking pansy? I'm down with being called a pansy. Because those flowers are beautiful. And you know why they became my favorite flower? I went to an arboretum once, back when I was living in Texas. It was the Dallas Arboretum. It was while I was at Job Corps. It was one of our field trips, I guess. And it was the first time I'd ever seen the flower. And it was this really beautiful bluish purple. And it just struck me, and I was like, I fucking love this flower. And I haven't not, like, whenever I think of flowers, I at some point think of pansies. And they're beautiful. And they come in multiple different colors. And it was the first time I'd ever seen that flower. And I loved it it was love at first sight, baby. Today is cleanup day. That's all there is to it. I gotta clean up in here. I gotta vacuum the living room. I gotta clean up all these. I gotta clean up the countertops and stuff and everything else. But, you know, Alita, going back to my criticisms, there was a forced sort of romanticism in that. You know, she starts to fall for this boy who's like showing around town and everything. And I'm like, I don't know how true to the actual original it was. For all I know, it was perfect. But like in both of those movies, the first act was like, hey, we're gonna establish this movie of a you know, I'm trying to think of my education with regards to film, writing, etc. And so there's there's three main points in a story that are the story, if you will. You have the inciting incident, you have the midpoint, and you have the resolution. So the inciting incident is effectively the thing that happens that causes the story to then occur. The events of the story unfold from there. Because if you don't put one of those in there, it's just a slice of life kind of thing. Which isn't inherently bad. You can make a slice of life style story that's more toned down, that's, if you will, closer to the heart. It doesn't have to be, you know, super external world saving type things. So, for instance, Beetlejuice, I go back to it because it was the movie that I watched for, I think it was my midterm, in talking about these exact things and having to speak of specific events that unfold. And like the inciting incident in that film, again, and I've said it before in another video, is when Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis's characters inadvertently die when they go across this bridge. That's how the event of the movie unfolds. Due to their death, you then get two stories that are interwoven. They become ghosts. They show up at their house at one point. They're not really sure how they got there, but their ability to interact and the like is different now. And throughout the story, they're trying to understand their new life, their new unlife, if you will. But in the process, because of their death, and this is important, because of their death, and because of the lack of their presence, their house gets sold to new buyers who then start to move in. And then then as a result of that, they wish to then learn their powers more so they can get these people out of their house. And in the process, they meet Beetlejuice, and he is this chaotic energy that, while helping them, is more out for himself. And they then have to decide at some point whether or not to let him become as powerful as he could be. Because throughout the process, they learn that it may not be a good idea for them to hang on to this house. And that's kind of like the midpoint of them, there's this point of no return where effectively you have to make a decision. And that's the midpoint of what's going to happen. Where am I? Where are we going with this, if you will? It's a solid fucking story. And it's and it's been a while since I've deconstructed and everything and seen the film. But if memory serves right, effectively what happens in the midpoint is Beetlejuice is becoming extremely powerful to the point where he may even cause them and others in the world of the undead. He may actually make it to where it is difficult for even the undead to be able to survive. And so they effectively have to make the choice between him or their house. I could be wrong, but I think that's where it goes. Because the resolution ends up being that, if I'm not mistaken, they effectively maintain their ghostliness, fuck around a little bit, but the residents, including Winona Ryder and her family and all them, get to keep the house. Because they can't keep the house, they're dead. But they wanted that house so badly to the point that they were almost willing to unleash this just force of chaos. I could be off on a little bit of that, but that's as much as I can remember. And I'm sure I didn't go that far with my my breakdown last time. Might as well just rewatch the film and maybe talk about it again later. I don't know. But the point of all of that is, despite that film being made in the 80s, and despite the fact that I haven't seen it in literal years, it has a structure that's sensical. It makes sense. And it's not just that it's formulaic per se. It's well acted, of course, but the story is self-contained and makes sense. The motivations, objectives of the characters make sense, and they're relatable. And when they are relatable, they stick with the audience more. When the average person can see someone or something do a thing and feel themselves in that position, it makes it more impactful as a film. But when it's outlandish, when it's so far out there that it's virtually not human, if you will, and one might say, well, it's stories about robots. Bicentennial Man. Bicentennial Man is, from my understanding, because I haven't actually read the book, but from what I understand, it's a very good adaptation of the book. And it shows Robin Williams' character abilities and his ability to be a dramatic actor very well. And it's of a robot who, for all intents and purposes, becomes human by the end of the film. And it is an incredibly heartwarming film about the nature of man without all that fluff. And perhaps, maybe I was biased by it, and I was thinking maybe we'd get something similar in either Chappie or in Alita. And we could have. And I would say, if anything, both of those films, if they had focused more on the emotionality of the relationship between them and their creators, or progenitors, if you will, would have made the existential threats that were in the films more important and more impactful. So, in Chappie, you have this big corporation who basically wants to use robots to create, like, I think, police and war machines and the like, that are not fully autonomous, I think, maybe, but at least piloted, and drone warfare type stuff. And I'm thinking that's part of some of the political discourse, if you will, or the political commentary of the film. Because a lot of times there's political commentary in film. I mean, if you watch the first live-action Transformers with Shia LaBeouf, at one point they're like, bring him back home, and the lead up and everything and all that makes it pretty emotional sentiment. Because, we've been at war forever. And, finally we brought him back home and nobody likes it. But when you make, while a movie is supposed to be, for all intents and purposes, an escape from reality, it's supposed to be relatable. Like, let's go back to Beetlejuice. The average person isn't a fucking ghost. The average person isn't dead. Unless you want to consider all of humanity, and then, 99% of the population is dead. But that's a little different. The people who go to watch films are not dead. They are alive. And yet the objectives of the main characters are relatable, because the relationships are real. The relationship to their house, the relationship to each other that are associated with the house, etc. The fact that they were about to build a life together and now they're dead are things that are relatable to an audience. And in so doing, make you feel for them and make you think, I might do that. I might get a little power hungry and potentially unleash, like if I were in their situation and, this was a real world kind of thing, I might inadvertently unleash this, weird phenomenal power that doesn't need to be unleashed. I don't know. There may be consequences to my actions, even in the undead world, and that's an interesting thread to weave into a film. And so they have to make that sacrifice of, they have to give up on something that they hoped, that they were fighting for in the beginning. Yet it still works out. Of course, because it's a story and they gotta tie it up in a nice little bow and everything, but that's a film that really does stand up. It doesn't matter what the content, man. Obviously, there's a lot of practical effects in it, and so that helps keep it, really relevant, or it allows it to hold up over time because you're not dealing with CG and the way that things were made and how they were made and types of computers and so on and so forth and resolutions and all that crap. And obviously, how you film things can matter a lot as well. I mean, look at Avatar, the movie. That movie doesn't hold up. Like, I loved that film when I first watched it, but holy shit, does it not look that great anymore? It really doesn't. And I'm like, why the hell are they going to make more Avatar films? I don't know. But So I'm gonna watch those. I'm gonna watch Beetlejuice. I'm gonna watch Bicentennial Man again today, because I wanna get a better understanding of what it was that I'm thinking about those films, and then maybe I'll watch. I don't want to though. I might watch Chappie and Aida tomorrow. I'm not sure. I had to clean a lot today though. But so the thing is that like Alita, okay, you have this thing where it seems like they're gonna be building this relationship between her and Christoph Waltz's character. But then she just throws him away, basically. Like, sure, she's acting like a teenager, I get it, but like, there's more to the story. And she just runs off with this one dude to then go play fucking rollerball. And then, because she's playing rollerball, you know, fucking with him and everything else and all this other crap, it's like, she sacrifices more and does more for this dude who just shows up out of nowhere and like shows her what rollerball is and chocolate is and some stuff. And like, I get it, because he is the sort of, he's kind of like this epitome of freedom. And, you know, Christoph Waltz is like trying to protect her because, you know, he thinks it's their daughter and all that stuff. And I get it, but it's like, it would have been it would have been much more impactful if these things, if so much of what had been seen basically, if you just took that love interest away and replaced him with Christoph Waltz, and they were more associated in how things were represented, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's like if she sees, you know, he takes her out on town and shows her these things and develops this relationship as father-daughter. That would have, I'm just getting tingles thinking about it. It would have been beautiful. It would have been awesome. And if she found out what his side job was, what his side hustle was, as a what is it? Some kind of hunter. And because of the relationship that they actually didn't but could have developed because the narrative was rewritten, she would have been more inclined to want to do what he does, because she is now identifying more with him. And so by identifying more with him and loving him more and being more entangled in his life as a daughter and having these thoughts of, I might do what dad does type thing, it would have made a better story. At least the film adaptation. Again, I haven't read the manga. I don't know. You know, and that's the thing about adaptations, is that often they want to do things as equivalent as possible without potentially modifying things for the sake of story purpose. Like, Lord of the Rings doesn't have Tom Bombadil in it whatsoever. His name is mentioned nowhere. But he's a big part of the books. But it's possible that in so doing, it would have disrupted the flow of the story that was established. And sometimes you have to do that when it comes to a film adaptation. You have to say, okay, this character would have been here throughout all of this, but in so doing, it's just gonna it's gonna add another level of complexity, and it's just gonna start breaking up the flow of the story. What we need to do instead is figure out a way to tell that story and to create those influences in a way that makes sense with what we're doing and with our constraints, because that's another thing too. people seem to think that there are no constraints when it comes to film. There's always constraints. And it's not just like the real world crap of, finances and time crunch and all that shit. It's little storytelling. And stories have constraints. Stories, if there was this old Reddit post I saw back on the writing subreddit, and somebody was talking about how they were having a hard time writing something because it felt like the conflicts were contrived, that they were just there because they had to put them there. But the thing is that conflict comes from every angle in life, and that is one of the reasons why we like stories. They are contrived. The whole damn thing is contrived. You're making shit up. The whole fucking thing. That's what a story is. Even if you're telling something that actually happened, you're still telling it in a way that's impactful to the audience so that it grabs their attention. It gives them something to think about, gives them something to feel about. It gives somebody something to root for as well. Sometimes, most of the time, I would say, is that we're rooting for... I'll turn that off real quick. I don't need it on no more. We're usually rooting for this one person, this one crew of people. We're rooting for our Frodo. Sometimes we're rooting for something else. Most of the time we're rooting for our Frodo, if you will. For instance, Cabin in the Woods, a bit different. Kind of rooting for something else entirely. And if you aren't, well, you're in for a pleasant surprise. Or maybe an unpleasant one. I don't know. But when you establish a film with a relationship between a creator in this heartfelt way, that's the movie I want to see. I want to see why. I want to see why this person's doing it. I want to know their history, their past, their expertise that's in association with this creation. I've never read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Maybe I should. Because my understanding of it is something similar. Like, they've made this creation for some sort of purpose. Not just because there's some maniacal creature-making person, whatever. But now, watching Dune, that's the reason I brought all this up. And the reason I watched it is because I was thinking about Chappie and Alita and getting upset while taking a shower. I was like, I need to watch this film finally. I haven't watched it. I wanted to watch it in theaters. I wanted to watch it in IMAX, but it just wasn't pragmatic to do so while I was in IMAX. It was only in IMAX for like 2 weeks. I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, hey, here's this other big movie. We're going to put that in IMAX too. I'm like, fuck you. No, I want to watch fucking Dune. Oh, hey, let's put Eternals in there. Nobody fucking cares about Eternals. Anyway. I never read the books, but I liked the adaptation. Some of the conflict didn't feel... I would say it felt almost documentary-esque. And probably because I've seen the previous Dune and I have a good understanding of it. I mean, it's It's an IP that's been around. People have talked about it all the time about various things. It's definitely a story of spectacle. It's very fascinating to watch. And I mean, you know, because there's this, it's an older story and it deals with prophecy of a white dude, you know, there's not much conflict. Like, I know that Paul is going to become Muad'Dib, that he is the Kwisatz Haderach. It's interesting. It like this story, this version is an interesting adaptation of it, and I do like it. And so I can't approach watching this film, let's say, the same way that I would multiple other films, because of the fact that, like, the relationships are there, and I would say that Lady Jessica is probably the best performer. Her name is Rebecca Ferguson. Of the people that I had seen, she was the one that had the most emotional impact through her performances. She is, in so many ways, the driving force of this story. And if, I mean, I doubt it, but if they somehow make it to where she is effectively the main character throughout the whole, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, Jason Momoa, he does good at, you know, being a badass. Oscar Isaacs, surprisingly not really in the film. I mean, he's there, of course, but like, and I'm not against, like, I like him as an actor. He's great. His performance in Ex Machina, great. Especially. And there's this one TV show that he's in with, I think, Jessica Chastain. I saw a piece of it, I think, when I was in South Beach. Apparently it's seriously good show and great performances by those two. But, like, the two characters that this story is centered around is Paul Atreides and his mother, Lady Jessica, who is a Bene Gesserit, who has this voice ability, this sort of telekinetic speech that can actually cause you to, you know, kill yourself. You kill other people. Well, I don't think you can kill yourself. Because as far as I can tell so far, it doesn't seem to have that ability. Which would kind of make sense. It's a good limitation if you were going to incorporate that into something, into a fiction. Let me check, make sure you're still running. Okay. If you were going to incorporate a telekinetic ability to cause people to do things, or to force them, I would think forcing them to kill themselves would be a thing that would be off limits, essentially, because it's like, it's so against, you know, human nature and all that stuff. And limitations can be useful. You know, then there's like some of the tropes that you get from the original Dune, and they're done a little differently, and they're done well. I mean, this is a film of spectacle for me, because it is a film. It is a story that, at least through the previous iterations that I've seen, is something that I'm aware enough of, that I know well enough of. And I enjoyed watching it. Like, I had a big smirk on my face throughout most of the film, so it was good that I watched it. And then I turned around and watched The Fifth Element, because why the fuck not? I don't know why, but I was like, hey, let's watch Fifth Element. Let's throw it in there. But I am done for the day, so at least with this recording, I am going to clean up throughout the day, try to watch Beetlejuice and Bicentennial Man. Maybe tomorrow I'll watch. I really don't want to watch Chappie and Alita though. That's the thing. I don't want to watch them again. But maybe I need to, just so I can better understand why I don't want to. I don't know. Have fun.